Intros are hard, so I'm just going to get right to it. I wanted to put out several videos showing my workflow in Adobe Lightroom Classic. I know when I first started photography, that's all I did was watch YouTube videos. So now I feel like it's my turn to try and give back and maybe help somebody that's just getting started. For tonight, for this evening, it's evening where I am in North Carolina. We have an image that doesn't really look like much. It was taken out at the coast of North Carolina in Nad's Head. It just sort of stood out to me one day whenever we got to the house. I said, you know, that might make a neat image. So I'll just get right into it and we will see where this goes. This is where it started, and this was my final product. So hopefully we can explain how I got there. See, much better. All right, so first off, what I do, I come in and I crop it. I go ahead and have an idea of what I do with my images. Most of the time it ends up on either Instagram or Facebook. So I want to get the maximum out of that phone screen that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and choose 4x3. That gets you the largest size of somebody's phone screen that you can. I like to go ahead and we'll follow the rule of thirds closely, not exactly, but trying to get the horizon line about equal with that top third. And we can go ahead and check our angle here since we have a nice clean ocean horizon. Drag it out. Fairly close in camera. Alright, done with that screen. Now, what I typically do is I play around a little bit. I'll drag the exposure down to see if I have any color left in the sky. Oh, I have color and detail. So, what I'm going to want to do is take a graduated filter and sort of see if we can't pull back some of those highlights and get a little detail. I apologize if this video gets a little lengthy. Editing photos is not just something that you can snap your fingers and it be done. We're going to try to take our time. 2 looks a little dark, so let's go about there. It's rough estimates, so we'll see what happens. All right, pulled that back a little bit. Let's pull back on the highlights. It's a little detail. Okay. But at the same time, whenever we reduced our exposure and we pulled back on the highlights, up in here tends to get a little dark. We kind of lose some detail in the shadows. So we'll go ahead and bump up the shadows just a little bit, about 50%. 100% looks fake. 50% gives us 46, 50%. Gives us a little detail in there. I apologize if you hear my laptop starting to overheat. Not overheat. The fan kicks up. Lightroom tends to make it do that. White balance. We'll click auto, see what it does, warmed it up a little bit. I know I took this photo in the evening time as the sun was setting behind me. See what daylight does. Daylight's a little blue for my liking. Cloudy. To be honest, I kind of liked the auto. Alright, so we'll go down in here in the tone section. Highlights, we can pull back a little bit more, try to gather a little more detail. We're paying attention to the histogram up here. I notice we don't have very much on the right hand side, which is our highlights. We pulled back so we don't have a white point yet. We'll get there in a second. We'll lift the shadows just a little bit. Again, I'm holding down the Option key on my MacBook and sliding the whites to the right just so we get a small white point. You can see there in this middle of the screen. And wow, I'm at 100. So, and that really brightened the image up. So I probably won't leave it at 100. We'll pull it back to say 95. You can tell it was somewhere right in here was the whitest point. As far as the blacks go, we will hit the Option key, slide back until the image has quite a bit. Somewhere in there, just to give it a little bit of contrast. Clarity, texture, dehaze. Dehaze does weird things. I'm not a fan of the way that looks, sliding it all the way to the right. There are plenty of people that do that and post their images, and if they like the way it looks, that's fine. But me personally, I don't really care for the way that looks. So, somewhere, I use this sparingly, maybe 18. Can't really tell, but it did a little bit. Clarity is another one of those things. People tend to really overuse this. I'm more of a, we'll just barely touch it. Texture, I don't like all the way to the left where it's smooth, where you get nothing to the right. You can make the image look a little grainy. I don't really think I'll do anything with the texture. I kind of like the way everything is. It's got enough different elements in it as it is. Vibrance and saturation. I'm not a fan of doing the whole thing all the way to 100. I think everything's way over saturated or way over colorized at that point. Maybe 10 or 11. Saturation, again, it's one of these things. I'm not a big fan of that. Or black and whites are fine, but this image has a nice range of color. So we'll go to 10 again. Luminance, saturation, and hue. I don't really mess with the hue too much. Most of my work looks natural the way that I saw it with my eyes. Saturation and luminance, we can touch on a little bit. Saturation, I tend to use this little, I don't even know the name of this, there it is. Stop directly adjusting saturation. Okay, so if we touch it in the sky, you can see over here to the right, it tells you what color you're going to be adjusting. So if I press down here in the clouds, I'm raising it. We can go a long way in the yellows and oranges before, in my eyes, that looks bad. We just got to be careful as we're adjusting it. See, this is also orange. We don't really want to make the wood too orange, or at least I don't. As far as the water goes, I personally like the water to be nice and blue or aqua. Water changes color depending on the way the sun's hitting it. Out in the middle of the ocean, the water's super deep, or deep blue. Here, closer to the shore, you tend to get patches of green and light blue. So that looks pretty good right there. See, what else do we have? Luminance. Luminance, I will touch up in the sky and see what it does. Sometimes, see, it's more affecting the water there. It's taking, if I reduce the luminance, it's taking all the sheen off of it. Going back up, it tends to make it a little brighter. I don't really care to touch the luminance too much, so I'll cancel that back out. Coming down to, well, first off, can't believe I forgot this. Immediately, before I even crop it, I should have hit Enable Profile Corrections and Remove Chromatic Aberration. That is the first thing I recommend everybody do, regardless. Can't believe I forgot that. New to this whole YouTube thing. I'm flustered. So going back up to sharpening, I take the mask, so I'm going to hit Option and then click the masking slider, and slide it over to where I can make out good, I don't want to say good details, but what I can tell what the image is, sort of. There's a cabana looking thing, a boardwalk, and some grass, and what I presume is an ocean. So somewhere around 84, 85 for this particular image. And as far as the sharpening goes, I will try to choose something to look at. I mean, I don't like over sharpening an image. It can cause a little bit of noise if you're not careful. So like if I go all the way to 150, it may not show up real well on the screen, but it just causes little fragments of noise in the sky where typically you don't want. So somewhere around 61, between 50 and 60 for this image. I think that looks nice. Noise reduction. I don't have a whole lot of noise in this image. It was still fairly light out. You can go all the way to the end and it kind of softens it. I don't really care to do that. A vignette. That's all personal preference. I'm not a big vignette person. It makes the corners lose all their, I don't know. It's just not for me. See how far are we off? How far are we off from what I originally did? Oh wow, we're pretty far off. But, that's the beauty of photography and editing. One day you feel like editing an image a certain way, and then you come back to an image a couple of years later, you re-edit it, and you like it in a whole different light. I think in the last one, I did have it a little less orange. So if we were to go back up to the white balance and do the daylight, that does pull some of the orange out. And now actually looking at it, I kind of like that. That gave the water a more crystal blue hue, which I like. What else? What else would I do to this image? I've sharpened it a little bit. The sky is a little, I don't know, lackluster. From what I remember, the clouds were quite orange. So if we were to come back in, go back into the graduated filter that we put on it. If we hit it with a little saturation, see that affects the water too much. I don't like the way that looks. Yeah, we'll get out of that. And then we'll go back into the saturation here. We'll try to lift that a little higher, just a little bit. See, at the same time, the sand's kind of the same color, and we're raising it. I think that's pretty good. I'm just gonna look at something real quick, see if possibly I wanted to get a little more detail in the sky. If I pull that down just a little bit. Yeah, see there you can get a little more detail. And that's this whole process. You edit a little bit, you go back, touch up something else. The more you edit, the more I'm raising shadows and trying to get the underneath the cabana to not be as dark. See if I didn't do anything. There's a little bit. I still like that. All right. That about wraps that up. I hope that helped. Leave a comment. Let me know if you have any techniques that you like for editing sunsets. Plenty of good places to catch a good sunset. My favorite being the North Carolina coast. I'm partial. This image is partial to me. This was my first image published in Our State magazine, so my first bid publication. I hope you all enjoyed, and let me know what I can do better next time. Have a good evening. Bye.